Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the EU-India webinar series, this time on the interesting topic of artificial intelligence, specifically pertaining to business opportunities with artificial intelligence in the times of COVID-19 and how maybe even EU-India collaboration can spur innovation in this space. Firstly, my apologies for not having my camera on. I think my camera has been overused in the past 6 weeks and has probably conked off. So we'll need to look at repairing that. But I hope you can hear me loud and clear. My name is Paul Jensen. I'm the team leader of the business support to the EU-India policy dialogues. And along with Sachin Gore, who is heading the ICT EU-India ICT Cooperation Project, we're pleased to welcome you all to this session. We have, for sure, a very vibrant discussion on this topic with a panel of experts from government sides of EU as well as India, as well as companies engaging in the specific space of artificial intelligence. The format is a webinar. You will be able to post questions in the question and answer box here. Sachin will take over after me and drive a panel discussion. I might butt in now and again to also pick their brains. Looking forward to that. And drive a panel discussion. I might butt in now and again. I think there's an echo. Can we all just, one of the house rules, let's all just mute our microphones when we're not speaking ourselves. That would be very useful to avoid all the echoes. Why is this space so interesting? Because of the context of the COVID pandemic, we have sort of an idea that, you know, one thing is that everything's gone online for all businesses. Everybody's doing what we're doing now, webinars and online meetings. But there are much more things that are happening. Remote controlling of large operations, big data is being pushed, and we think also artificial intelligence is actually getting a bit of a push. Looking into new areas, new innovation, new solutions using artificial intelligence, and that is specifically of interest to the collaboration between Europe and India, because also at political level, in the dialogue between EU and India, artificial intelligence is taking quite a big position in terms of those discussions. And what we're hoping is that this discussion we have today might inspire all of us. Some of you are businesses, some of you are associations, some of you are also within the government ecosystem, and inspire us to find out how can we spur more innovation, spur more collaboration between Europe and India, and how what is required to support that. How can we create conducive environments, and maybe we can reach such a position that there's so much interest that EU and India will actually put up a joint working group on artificial intelligence and discuss topics of whether, say, a center of excellence should be put in place, whether we should have associations of artificial intelligence players in India and in EU as part of that ecosystem. Maybe there should be joint research programs. We should expand on what is already there. And I promise you an exhilarating discussion that Sachin is going to guide with our experts here. There's a lot of interesting ideas, a lot of thought-provoking inspiration that we can build on going forward. So with that as context, I urge you to submit questions either in the question and answer box here on the Zoom webinar, or if you're on Facebook Live, you can also comment, and we will pick those all up. And Sachin and I will try and bring them all out in the discussion, and ensuing the moderated panel discussion that Sachin will start now. Thank you all, experts, for being here. Sachin will introduce you all briefly, so I won't spend time on that. So without further ado, Sachin, over to you, and call upon me as and when you require support or inputs. Thank you, Sachin.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for setting the context, and I think I'm feeling quite privileged and special today, because being part of the EU ICT standards project, somehow I'm getting this opportunity to be part of this conversation, which is quite significant in a way, although I think many of you would agree that AI, most people say, is a general purpose technology. So it's no more an ICT topic, if I may say. It's a very horizontal topic. But yet, still I'm here and I'm getting this opportunity coming from the ICT domain. But I think Paul has already mentioned the business aspect. And I think we have other experts who can also cover not just the technical and the business aspect, but with Mhrd and Benoit, we can also have other dimensions covered, that how AI is going to play a part in our lives. And we are very happy that we have quite an international audience today. And as Paul mentioned that, this webinar is being live broadcast on the EU India Facebook page. So that's EU in India. So if you're not able to join through Zoom and you want to ask a question, you can put it in the comment of this Facebook Live, and we will still get your questions. And I have a great privilege and honor that I have very good experts today. And we will start with a keynote by Benoit, who is Benoit Sobroche from the EU delegation to India. He's the first counselor. Among many other responsibilities, Benoit is also looking at the ICT topic. And when I say this, I can already see that Benoit is smiling, because as fact of the matter, he's also one of the experts looking at the COVID situation. So I really, look forward for Benoit's point of view. And right after Benoit, we will begin the panel discussion. And I'm very happy to report to you that we have three people coming for this panel discussion. So we have Mr. Rahul Lodhe from SAP Labs India. And Rahul is actually Senior Director Engineering and looking at the AI ML topic in SAP. So welcome, Rahul. It's good to have you on board here today. And we have Mr. Manu Saleh. In fact, I had a very good conversation with Manu yesterday, and Manu will probably enlighten us today. So he's the MD for Daimler here in India, also Mercedes-Benz, the other name, if I may use, of the brand. And I was really happy to have the conversation yesterday with you, Manu. And I hope, you can share your message with the wider audience today. And Mhrd, I already had a very good collaboration with you in past. You have supported multiple of our hackathons, with your outreach. So Mr. Mohit Gambhir, Dr. Mohit Gambhir represents Ministry of HRD Innovation Cell. And definitely we look forward to hear from you what is the open innovation that you are organizing here in India. And just a bit of housekeeping announcement here. So as you know, the digital channels are not limiting. So while people are speaking, you can still type your questions. And while we will have a lively panel discussion, we may pick your questions right away and not wait for the, initial panel to finish. So don't hesitate and type your questions as they come to you. So without further ado, I welcome you, Benoit. And please share with us your viewpoint on how you see EU-India collaboration on the topic of AI, especially the business aspect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sachin. Thank you very much, Paul, also for the invitation. Good afternoon to everybody. And yes, it's my privilege. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon and to defend the case of this EU-India collaboration in the field of artificial intelligence for open innovation in response to the COVID crisis. I think I don't need to remind, the disruptive nature of this global crisis that we're living. The very fact that we're meeting now, through this webinar, a point that would have been very hardly accepted even 2 months ago, which has become now the new normal, shows the extent of the disruption, but also, I would say, the speed of adaptation that we can show. Regarding artificial intelligence, I would say that the COVID crisis had two very concrete disruption impact, I would say, in India, in the fact that two major events that were to be organized in India have been cancelled. The first one was the Global AI Summit which was planned in April this year, talking about artificial intelligence for good. The second one was a responsible AI for social empowerment summit that India wanted to spearhead, which was planned for October. And again, it has been cancelled because of the disruption brought by COVID. It doesn't mean that AI is less relevant than it used to be. And actually, I mean, that would definitely be the contrary. The need for AI is even more pressing and urgent than it used to be. And especially, as I was mentioning, for adaptation to all the threat and risk which this global crisis represents. The first one being, of course, on relation to the healthcare, but also, I mean, threatening our own lives or the life of our loved ones. And the second one, which is as real as the first one, which is the threat and the risk posed on the economy, and therefore also on the organization of our societies. And AI, I mean, is identified as a key element to help answering to all these challenges. And I'm sure that our experts will develop much more in details all these business opportunities that already pre-existed before this crisis, but which this crisis show that they can actually be redirected and specifically address the challenges represented by COVID. In the health sector, we knew that AI was essential and instrumental in developing genomics and developing new vaccines or therapeutics by checking these not only genomics but also the structural molecular structure, of these either, I mean, viruses or potential drugs. So the AI is definitely helping in defining candidate vaccine or candidate therapies for the COVID. It's also helping, as it's known, it's a great help in developing new diagnosis tools, in particular in the imagery sector. But in the COVID sector, it's helping in predicting and giving a prognosis support in terms of potential organ failure. It's also being developed to help not only the robotics as it's used in traditional sectors for the help, for instance, in surgery, but also in monitoring the symptoms of the patients and also evaluating and assisting the ventilators. It's also used as a support to the epidemiologist in evaluating and as a predictive tools of risk factors and evolution in the population. So that's on the direct health, but also on these economic consequences. We saw the thriving of the e-commerce, but also the disruptive elements on the supply chains, which, of course, I mean, the AI also has a potential to help and streamline. The help of AI in manufacturing will definitely support the social distancing in the manufacturing sectors, and the AI in fintech can help in developing innovative solutions. Not to forget the also very important disruptions and innovation in the education sector, where we have in very few weeks a complete change of approach of this education, much more centered on the students themselves and developing a tailored education pattern. So a lot of opportunities for AI. Why EU and India, I mean, would be keen to collaborate on this aspect? I think it would be because of two aspects. One, which is the complementarity of the two blocks, and the other one on the similarities of approaches. On the complementarities, I would mention that in the EU, the EU is known for being strong in the manufacturing sector, and particularly in robotics, but also in medical devices. And as some very good innovation cases in these fields in particular. Another interesting point of the EU is also its experience in interoperability. The EU, being a construction of 27 different member states with different culture and background, had to work and defining how we can exchange best among each other. And one specific aspect that I would like to share, which is relevant for our discussion, is this e-health network, which has been working for years now within the EU, defining the standards allowing better flow of data and information across member states, allowing therefore a better interoperability of systems. Regarding the strengths of India, India is of course very renowned for its strengths in IT and software and the ICT sector, which represent a sizable part of its GDP, but also is recognized as one of the pharmacies of the world, so therefore very, very strong in the pharmaceutical and manufacturing sector, being for medicine, but also for vaccines. Another very strong point of India is the pool of trained workforce, which is already being used for human-assisted machine learning, for instance, in artificial intelligence. But also this pool is definitely being trained again and improved. And a very recent initiative, which was taken by NASCOM, which is the IT industry association, which developed an online artificial intelligence free course during the lockdown period, will certainly develop further the capacity in this domain in India. And one last point that I would like to mention in India is the innovative spirit, which exists in particular for frugal solutions. That's for the complementarity, but for the similarities of approaches between EU and India, it was mentioned a number of things already regarding the hackathons, which have been taken by both parts, but also digital innovation hubs, which have been developed both in India and in the EU. But I would like to spend a bit more time on similarities of values. And I think it's an essential part which merits and explain the power and the strength of a potential collaboration. That's about values. I had the chance last December to accompany a mission from the European Commission, from the Joint Research Center, which came in India for 1 week, meeting a series of institutional and private stakeholders working on artificial intelligence, the aim of which was to understand the ecosystem and the values that underpin this ecosystem. And it was very interesting to note that actually India and EU share the same approach of human-centric artificial intelligence. What does that mean? I would say that it has two specific aspects. One which is on data and the other one which would be on algorithms. You know that artificial intelligence is, of course, based on huge amount of data that will be analyzed through the specific algorithms, which will take the advantage of enhanced computing capacity. First of all, the data. It's very striking that in all the discussions in India regarding artificial intelligence, we come back to the basic elements of data and protection of personal data. Data privacy is a very important part of it, where India and the EU share the same approach. But that's only part of the issue, because privacy of data, together with the security of it, to be sure that it's protected, and the transparency of the use of data, would build a trust which will enhance the accessibility of this data. But accessibility is one thing, the availability would be another one, and on which EU and India also share a common vision. There are different options actually in the world, is to know to whom this data is available. I mean, would it be available to a few powerful major actors, or should it be available for the many and thriving an environment of competitiveness and development of enterprise and innovation? And definitely EU and India share this vision of having data available for the many, a thriving force for competitiveness, and therefore developing a set of data tools that will be available with a possibility of data flow, but also data findability through enhanced interoperability by developing specific format and standards for this data to be retrieved, and an open innovation aspect which would allow in particular startups and small and medium enterprise to benefit from this data. And therefore there is an aspect on the regulatory framework which is working on that to allow not only the public but also the private data to be shared for a common good. That's on this data part. On the algorithm part, there is also a common vision between EU and India. We are at the moment developing in the urgency new AI tools in order to combat the virus. We shouldn't forget that despite its urgency, there are also some fundamental elements that we should keep in mind. The first one is, of course, safety. To be sure that the algorithm or the artificial intelligence tools that are going to be used are safe, either, I mean, from malicious intent, but also free from unintended effects. So therefore, the innovation should be counterbalanced by also taking into consideration these elements. These elements are one part, but the other one on the human-centric part is the respect of human values. And that's where we talk about ethics. Ethics by design, which would allow, again, I mean, respect of basic rules, privacy, non-discrimination, dignity, freedom of expression, all of these elements that should not be forgotten when we develop AI tools. Now, the balance to be found is how we can share this innovation and at the same time be sure that we take into consideration these elements. And that's where we have discussions, which is, and the collaboration between the two parts, which is very interesting. It was mentioned by Paul in his introduction that we have bilateral ICT dialogue between EU and India at the policy level, where we discuss all these options. So on the artificial intelligence, but also we have also a dialogue on data privacy for enhanced flow of data between the two blocks, and also the possibility to untap the potential of the data pools which exist in either block. We also have already working for the last 2 years a network of incubators between the EU and India, which has been thriving and very active. But there is also a lot of further potential opportunities, and I would just mention them very rapidly before giving you the floor back, Sachin. In addition to the technical possibilities, the technical collaboration, which is evident, and I think, I mean, we're going to focus on that, there are many more collaboration. I mentioned the opening of data spaces and the possibility of having standard interoperable set of data that would enhance the development of innovation, I mean, from both parts. But also the possibility to work on this framework, organizational framework, which should be adapted to the situation, and also should be subject to training before putting it in places. And for instance, we're discussing the possibility of exchanging activities and experience with regulatory sandboxes that would allow the potential creators to test their innovation within these sandboxes before making them public. Other possibilities of collaboration on investment and funding, of course, but also, and to finish on that because it's very important, collaboration on this social and societal aim and value. Artificial intelligence will definitely have a huge impact on the societies. And that's where I believe that beyond the case for this urgent solution and the tremendous acceleration of the development of artificial intelligence, which is being brought by this crisis of coronavirus. We should not forget that our essential values, which make the objective of the two events that I was mentioning at the beginning, these two artificial intelligence events that were supposed to happen in India, which have been cancelled, they are this artificial intelligence for good and artificial intelligence for the betterment of humanity. I mean, these ultimate aims are more relevant than ever. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sachin.
Yeah, thank you, Benoit. I think you covered a lot of ground, and if I were to, take important points to build conversation from here, I think data is a big enabler of what you mentioned, and at the same time, we need to be careful when we are building these algorithms, because automated decision making is something that is uncharted waters, and we need to be very careful how we are doing. And you also mentioned Joint Research Committee, JRC, if that is correct. And I'm happy to report that we have Elena Sanchez part of this webinar, so she must be happy listening to you. And you also mentioned about standards and interoperability. But I think beyond the technical aspect, you mentioned important aspect of collaboration. And I'm very happy that, we could right away start with Mhrd and listening from him, because he has been leading something that I've been observing for last 3 years as part of the Mhrd Innovation Cell. So I invite Dr. Mohit Gambhir right away, and with the first question to you after listening to Benoit, can you share with us, what is this Mhrd Innovation Cell and what is the objective, if I may ask you?
Yep. Thank you so much, Sachin, and my pleasure to talk to you all. See, as an MHRD's Innovation Cell, the journey began a couple years ago. And the basic objective of this division or the cell from the government was to foster the innovation culture across the higher education institutions. Now, what is happening it was felt that there is some missing gap. Like students, they are into their academics, they were studying something, but their innovation quotient while they are moving out, they are missing something like being enterprising. And the buzzword and everybody is moving around the entrepreneurship, startups, and all other things. So we thought, why not to channelize this energy at the level while students are in colleges? The multiple countries across the world, they were already doing that, but we were missing something like that in India. So we established government established this particular cell, and various activities we started doing. And one of the flagship initiative we are doing is Smart India Hackathons. And that is, again, again, needless to mention, like there only Sachin is indispensable part of that initiatives as well, because I keep on asking of his experience from EU hackathons, which you guys are doing a lot. So now the thing as in Smart India Hackathon, the way we drive it, it is like taking the problem statements from different ministries and then rolling up to the students and then asking them to solve or give the solution. And it has two editions, like software and the hardware. Students come in, jump in, and we mobilize for software edition close to 11,000 students across the country. For hardware edition, we again mobilize close to 4,000-5,000 students, and everything, the expense is being borne by the government. And the traction is such that we are able to get a couple of startups, precisely 18 in last 2 years, and around 300 plus student teams, that is the prospective startups. They are under incubation in different locations across the country. And we are taking a lot of support from ministries, governments, state governments, and industry as well. So we are trying to develop a hardcore framework or a very strong ecosystem. This is one. Now, another thing, organizing or getting things done is okay. But getting the output, I told you that we are getting them incubated. But again, how to channelize the culture. how to take those students, keep them motivated that they should come up with different things. So we started establishing IICs, primarily I go by that is Institutions Innovation Council. And as of today, while I speak, we have 1,600 plus of them established across the country in various institutions, higher education institutions. Very interesting data point, which I would like to highlight to the august audience. Generally, we say innovation and stuff, primarily in India, it goes by the technology. We generally say innovation, entrepreneurship, AKA by technology. Now, in our case, what has happened while we are establishing these innovation councils, so 53% of these councils are obviously in technology institutions, but 47% of them, they are into applied colleges, they are into medical schools, they are into different other schools, other colleges, primarily higher education institutions, which I must say. Another mandate or the stuff activities which we are doing through these IICs. We are rolling up design thinking curriculum, cognitive skill development curriculum, IPR development, technology commercialization transfers, and we are calling up experts from across the geography rather, that who can come along and talk to our students. It's a kind of centrally monitored aspect which we are doing. So it's been only 1 year, yeah.
So you mentioned hackathons. So just let me pinpoint a question there, because Benoit also mentioned hackathons and you also mentioned. So now during the crisis, can you share if you have seen anything around AI and how useful has been this hackathon as an instrument in handling COVID?
Okay. Again, thanks, Sachin, for bringing that point, because there is a commendable, I believe, achievement over there. India moved to lockdown on 24th of March. The very same day, we announced event known as Ideathon. And so even the audience will be surprised to know. So 24th of March, we announced. 26th, we closed the entries. Within, I believe, roughly 48 hours, we received 5,600 plus entries across the country. Almost all the states covered, all the innovators and startups based in the higher ed institutions. And 27th to 29th, we did that. Another event we organized, or the program we did, was Samadhan, which ran for around 15 days based on the experience of Ideathon. Now, coming to your question about AI-based solution outcome of these programs which we did. Number one, our aspect was to have a far about reach, traction, awareness, and the outcome. I very quickly on the fly, I remember
I think, Mohit, we lost you. Are you able to hear us?
Hello, am I audible?
Continue, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say, majority of our, hello, is my internet okay? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Please continue. So you were saying that about AI solutions in the hackathon.
Yes, right. So I mentioned that primarily, if I say around 40 to 50%, or rather more than 50% solutions which came out, they were AI based. And even the winners, if I said the ratio was around 55 to 60% of winners, they came up with some AI-based early diagnostic solutions, diagnosing the images, scanning through them, X-ray diagnostics, but taking the data sets. And even we have seen few jury members that they were participating from Europe as well, as and they came in expert and they evaluated the winners. So again, as Benoit mentioned, the collaborative aspect started during the COVID. And we have already tasted the waters during past 1.5 months. And a lot of friction has happened during the time. And that's because from our innovation cell network, we were able to have that kind of attraction across the country.
So two quick questions, to further build there so that, we can include other panelists in the follow-up conversation. So you have established, what you're doing in terms of the open innovation. You're also mentioning that there's quite a bit of traction you have in terms of AI solutions which you're student teams are able to bring. And you can already somehow demonstrate that you could use this innovation engine during COVID to find solutions. So my two quick questions to you: how are you engaging industry in this, or how do you see the role of business opportunities or industry in this? And any thoughts on EU-India collaboration further that you see here?
Right. So coming to your first question, Sachin, the very recent edition which we have concluded of Smart India Hackathon, and this year because of this pandemic, it's getting delayed. But since last year, or since these two editions, industry has become our indispensable part. So last year, it was not that I only refrained myself to the ministries or the government departments. I invited industries across the board, and we have multiple, if I say the vertical or the gamut of companies, maybe Siemens, ABB, Ericsson, Samsung, Sony, or whatnot. It was like, you name it, we have it kind of a scenario. We have 100+ industries or the corporate big Vs, they were there. They submitted their problem statements, and students worked on that. Many of the students, they moved on as an interns in the company. Also, few of the students who proposed their startups, now they were getting the backup from those companies. Another very interesting offshoot which came in, it's not only internship. I believe I have started receiving calls from corporate world and from the industries top notch, that can you share the details of the participants or the shortlisted one? We want to directly recruit them from this platform. So this was something, and I believe it helped corporate in cutting their recruitment costs tremendously, because we are getting top 20 shortlisted from few lakhs across the country. Reason being, our hackathons traction, it's already termed as world's biggest open innovation model. So we have traction to 7 to 8 lakh techno students across the country, higher ed, and those who are in the pre-final, final year. This is one. So engagement of industry is there. Now, number two, coming up, as you mentioned about Europe and India's engagement, we are already working on a couple of things that, as our Honorable Prime Minister have announced, India-Portugal hackathon, and though I take care of international hackathons, so something is in the offering. I cannot divulge more details as in and how things will shape up because of this pandemic ongoing. Maybe it will happen virtually or the online stuff. Before pandemic, it was planned to happen in September or October this year. So we are trying to have an international collaboration. We have already conducted very similar events with Singapore. We are doing it year on year. So 2 editions have already been concluded with Singapore, India. And we are going to the next level, even with European Union as well. So that is the take from our end, from my end, Sachin.
Thank you, Mohit. I hope that you could stay with us for the follow-up questions. But anyways, I will tag this question for Benoit when we come to him later, because as you mentioned, Portugal is part of EU, and maybe there's a possibility to do something together in the future, maybe on the topic of AI. So you would be happy to know that the 2 gentlemen with me here, Mr. Rahul and Mr. Manu, they both their organizations are supporting also startups in some way or other. And I learned that from Manu yesterday. And I have been, let's say, lucky that 2 years back, we were organizing a hackathon in Bangalore, and SAP India, they hosted us in their Bangalore office, and they have quite a big strategy on startup. So I think, we can see that somehow the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, they are all here. We need to fit them together, with your innovation model. And you have already highlighted that how, your innovation engine is helping in recruitment and also bringing out original ideas. I hope that, more and more collaboration can happen from here. And I would like to now move to Rahul. And if Rahul, if I may request you to introduce yourself, very briefly. And what is the kind of work that you are doing in link to AI in your organization? What has been your journey so far? If you can explain to me in briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. And it's a great, honor to be part of this panel discussion. A lot of things to learn. I think thanks to Mohit also, we have been quite a lot hearing about the hackathons, and also one of the consumer of a great talent coming out of it for mostly off-campus recruitment that we have. And also, I think along with working many hackathons been sponsored by SAP as well. So a great job from the Indian government perspective. For me personally, I have been now with SAP about 17 years. Been kind of, you can think of out of my 20 years of career, been most of time spent with SAP, and it's a great place to be. Always every day challenged with new innovation and business processes that we work upon. Especially on most of my journey being with analytics, machine learning side, some part of spend time along with S4 and ERP space as well. So get a blend of how business processes works in core and how the innovation can be built top of it. And that's where I would, spend most of my career. Currently, I've been more focused on also enablement and adoption of AI offering that SAP has called data intelligence, which is more on machine learning space. And in that context, we do keep talk about many customers and partners as well as government organizations to be a part of this journey. Also, I have pleasure to represent SAP in the NASSCOM forum for the COVID-19 pandemic response course that we have technically along with the other industries at this point of time, and that gives a lot of insight about how situation goes in. As per our SAP concern from the analytics and artificial intelligence portfolio perspective, for us, as we are mainly a business company, we more focused on the business process, and automation of a business process is something which is very important, irrespective of we are in pandemic situation or in general as well, to how we can bring the efficiency to the businesses. Now it's become super more important, as Varma mentioned as well. The response time is important, and most of the businesses are going online. And that's where we have something called IRPA, where we work on the robotic automation process by using the machine learning technologies. Importantly, we also have other parts to it, where the personalization of every data and the information is important. So conversational AI is something that we're building with the bot technology that uses efficiently. Hope there is no echo. I mean, I was getting some echo. No, okay.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. And looking at how does the industry transform, and personalization of every information is important to individual. The AI plays a very critical role in getting there, and our conversational AI technology, that's something supports in a big way. We also worked on end-to-end business or data science platform, where we look at how we can realize the AI to the enterprises. So as and when it's easy to talk about how do we do the POCs or some topics which are come up, but it's very difficult to productize it and make it enterprise ready. And as we know, SAP being working with the Fortune 500 customer, most of the big customers are part of SAP. Is important that how do we bring up the AI that we built up so far, or the POCs that customers have been building, how it can be come in the context of the complete end-to-end business process. And that's where data intelligence as a product would support to him. So there has been a lot of initiative going on. We have around analytics as well, where analytics been trying to bring in the complete space, and as well as the business processes that AI we bring for the called AI business services, which kind of embedding into the each ERP products as such.
So I think it's very interesting what you say, Rahul, and I can totally imagine that the kind of data SAP sees is probably very few organizations would see that kind of data. And if you could, probably as an organization play a role in this, data space topic, what Varma mentioned, I think it's going to be very interesting. May I request other people to mute the mic? There is a bit of echo. Probably as an organization play a role in this, data space. I think it's going to be very interesting. May I request other people to mute the mic? It's a bit of probably as an organization play a role in this. Because what is I think it's very May I request other people to mute? Yeah, I think it's better now. I think one of the panelists' mic was on. So Rahul, I think that's a good point that you mentioned about data, and I think that would be a very important, a building block, as Benoit mentioned, in enabling innovation. And I think Mohit is also listening to you, so I could already see that there's a bit of synergy here. I could not see Manu. I don't know, Manu, if you are still there. Maybe Manu will join in the meantime. I wanted to bring him in this conversation, at the same time as you. But let me ask you a question further. For you, Rahul, how do you see, AI in general for SAP? You already mentioned, but if you want to add further, relevance of India for SAP, and how do you see, AI in these COVID times? If you can answer these two questions.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk to the, there's still some amount of echo. Are you able to hear me clearly, Sachin?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, excellent. So I think especially in general, from the AI point of view, when we talk to many of CIOs and different customers at this point of time who are been working with, I think there are three things which are very important for them: optimizing and automation of a process, strengthening their supply chain, as Bernard touched upon it, and definitely supporting the remote work. What we see at this point of time is the overall spending that that overall online retail business would have has increased drastically. I mean, if we see the research published yesterday on the US market, where we had about, I think, 16 or 17% of the overall online transaction were conducted so far from the inception of the online trading started. But the last 5 or 6 weeks has been increased by around 148%, and that trend is going to be to will live for a long time perspective. So it's important that how does the supply chain and automation would play an important role in this case, because as and when people want things to be available for them at very faster pace, and they would like most of the things to be available online as well. As far as from the SAP perspective, we would more focused on how we strengthening our supply chain process using the machine learning and AI technologies is maybe the kind of predicting the outcomes that we would have. How is the customer behavior? Look at that perspective. We have also some of the applications that we try to embed it into the core processes, like cache application, or we also have application where we extract the documentation, so no more physical documents would be required in current space. If you see, people would not want to have hard copies of things as the physical movement is difficult. But can we read the documents and transform them directly into the system, which can be easily available for the processing, and that's something which could be make things much more faster. So important is going to be that how the supply chains are particularly strained in the times of the crisis, and SAP will ensure that customer will have more flexibility and operate them to make it more easier and organize for them. Also, I think importantly, how we make the team work digitally and engage them on a regular basis as the remote work becomes the overall important part. So that's why I would look at the way SAP would, transform our upcoming AI strategies.
So Manu, if I may ask you to unmute yourself, a warm welcome to you. You have a nice wallpaper. We all know what that is. So very, aspirational brand for most of us. So if I may request you, Manu, I was reading your profile. It's a great honor and privilege to have you with us today. And that all your life you have been an R&D person. And this is a topic, which is kind of also has been for many years an R&D topic, if I may say. So can you share, a brief overview about your work and how AI is touching for Daimler?
Yeah, sure. And thank you very much. I had some tech issues, lost a little bit of what Rahul was saying, but I'm sure I'll catch up with him offline and get it back again. Judith and Sachin, thanks for dragging me into this event today. I'm really happy to be with Mohit and Rahul, but others as well, talking about AI, but most importantly about the EU-India collaboration, because I think corporates like us are a little bit a microcosm of the bigger EU-India discussions that you have. So whenever you see a French, a Spanish, Italian, German company that has successfully been in India for long, doesn't matter as a market for products or as a IT giant like SAP or my previous employer Bosch, which is an automotive tier one, or the OEM that I so happily work for right now, Mercedes. Clearly, success stories that you can carry into the larger discussion of an EU-India collaboration. Thanks for inviting. So I've been here about close to a decade now at Mercedes, before that at an automotive tier one. And like I said, the big agenda behind is certainly to kind of bring these two cultures and countries together in the guise of engineering, right? Engineering is just an excuse. I think behind the spirit of kind of understanding and working together and growing an enterprise, which is, I think, a sign of trust behind technology, is actually the agenda behind. And we've been doing it for about 26 years now for Mercedes in India. 1996 is when this R&D center started. For those of you who are new to the center, it's the largest center for Mercedes R&D outside of Germany. So nowhere in the world does Mercedes have such a big R&D and IT setup as much as in India, but I'm sure that's the same for several other corporates. Rahul would probably say the same thing for his brand as well. And that goes on to show, what kind of collaboration exists between the two locations, EU and India, and how much trust on technology and development, on engineering capabilities is placed in India here. We're about 6,000 people in the company, internal staff, about 4,000 contractors who work for us within the campus. So about 10,000 people together in Bangalore, largely a small office in Pune as well. The first thing, of course, people think about the car standing behind me, or a bus or a truck, automotive and mobility. And the context of AI has also crept in the world of mobility quite strongly. While you heard Rahul speak about stuff in SAP, or IT majors who can talk about data-based AI and so on, I think voice and video-based AI, to complete the circle, has been very strongly doing rounds in the discussion in the tech circles for quite some time now. And I'm so happy to say that again, after being known as a center for mechanical engineering, a center for CAE and simulations, India was trying to grab every opportunity when new tech came up in the corner. And when Mercedes discussed AI about 4 years ago for the first time, India again could raise its hand and say, what we can contribute. And it all culminated, to keep the story short, when we went to the CES in Las Vegas, and there was the GLA standing there with video-based AI inside the car. And the Indian engineers were proudly on stage saying, this was developed in India and was put on stage. I think that was really a happy moment for us. And this still, we realize, is just the beginning for us, because the usage of AI within the mobility sector, within the car, but also outside the car, is just increasing. With or without COVID, the usage of artificial intelligence, and I'm sure there are people in the audience here and the panelists who are keenly following up what's going on with autonomous driving. When is finally the world getting to see a car where you don't have to touch the steering? Technically, what it does basically is to replace, to keep it simple, all the decision making that a human driver, he or she, would have to do. Of course, we are always joking about the traffic in India and the number of interrupts that a system like that can get here, not only from cars on the streets, but animals and two-wheelers and who else can walk in. But truly an engineering challenge somehow to let your system absorb all these inputs through either vision, through sound, through radars, lidars, and other sensors, and eventually take that decision that you or I would take driving that car, right? So great test ground for us and a great opportunity for us. I'll keep it really short by saying the first part that yes, automotive industry has not shied away from AI discussions now since about 3 to 4 years. The first part of the AI is already in the car for you to see. We have been looking at AI as a means to touch customer functionalities and therefore customer lives in some way. So this is not just your shopping list that's popping up on the browser that says, I think you may like this. It's really a car, a living car, kind of giving you an impression that it knows its owner, its customer, and is able to respond back. Whether it's you naturally talking to the car like you would today, if you're on YouTube and look at the famous advertisement called Hey Mercedes, which is the keyword with which we activate, just like an Alexa, Google Dot would respond. You say, Hey Mercedes, and the head unit springs to life and talks back to you. I had the opportunity to release that car in Bangalore for 60 to 100 press people who came in last November before the crisis hit us. And they was just amazed about how an Indian accent of the English, how natural questions, you don't really have to learn a sign language to communicate with it. You can do natural gestures to the car today, and it's all enabled by AI on the back end. Sachin, I'll stop there and then ask you for the next.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to stop you. I wanted to add, a question to your, because you yesterday shared so many amazing things with me. I just wanted to make the audience aware that the car you drive is also a test bed for your engineers to, experiment interesting accessories. So you are definitely, having a very enriched experience of all the, lab pilots, if I may say. And I was about to say about the Indian accent in the conversational AI, because Rahul also mentioned about conversational AI. And I think that is very regional specific, and if you look India as a market, definitely you need, the Indian accent in it. And I think there's a lot of scope for open innovation. So if I may ask you, Manu, just to elaborate a bit on, in your introduction profile, there's also a mention about startup initiative of your organization. Can you quickly mention about it? What are you doing there?
Oh, yeah, clearly. I think just like all the other major corporates, we've been trying under our own flagship brand, kind of touch base with Indian startups in this case, globally too in all other locations. So there's a Daimler brand called Startup Autobahn, kind of with the German term. And we brought this brand to India, October of 2018. So we had a big launch here in Bangalore and running our third sprint still. We're learning a lot. We're not as fast as some of the others. But on the other hand, the field is also a little complex. So we're kind of not looking at the typical things that you see outside, health, e-commerce, and so on. So to get to automotive simulations, to get to automotive physics, and try to get startups that are working on it. But it's an amazing experience so far, although we've taken few ideas all the way to the top and brought them to Germany, to the headquarters, integrated their results in the product, and I'll continue to run such sprints here in India for us. Startup Autobahn is the platform, just like SAP has their own, or a NetApp and others have their own, which is kind of looking for automotive global problem statements here in India with our own coordinator and service partner, and trying to attract them first to the India office, trying to solve their problem, get to an MVP stage, and finally push them to a global stage to see if some of the solutions can find a place in the global network. Without COVID, we were just about to bring in a big, give some tailwind to the whole program and give it a big push. Unfortunately, COVID has delayed those plans, and we'll have to wait until things settle down before we can go back and see how much more we can depend. But results so far have been amazing. So Startup Autobahn is here to stay for good. We'll look for selective physics and engineering startups that are really interested in solving automotive problems, because that's my world and that's our world here. And we'll be glad to take them on a global stage eventually with that.
So I think, I definitely want to, there are many ways I can take this conversation forward. There are so many ideas popping in my head, but we have the paucity of time to both you, Manu, Rahul, because I wanted to bring other panelists also into the discussion, and wanted to throw away questions where all of you can quickly respond, right? So because all of you have heard Benoit, you heard Mhrd, you heard Rahul, now you heard Manu. I am sure there are a lot of crisscross ideas, and now we are also having a lot of questions coming from the audience. So I would just relay one question to you, which came around business aspect, if I may. So Mohit, you want to say something, please?
Yes, Sachin, and to the other panelists. Actually, I had a hard stop at 3. My departmental meeting has started, and I have to be there with the bureaucrats. So, would like to take excuse, and thank you so much. It was an enriching experience. And Sachin, if there any question comes towards my way, you can offload it to me. Maybe later on, I can send you the response. And pleasure meeting Rahul, Manu, and re-meeting again Benoit and Judith. Everybody, thanks. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Mohit. We'll get back to you.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. So I was asking quickly a reaction from Rahul, Manu, that there is a question that came to me from someone in South Africa, and they're asking about the business aspects of AI. So are you able to justify the ROI on building AI solutions? So very quickly, if both of you can respond to that.
Rahul, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think we have been now venturing for AI last 3 or 4 years. I would say we have a couple of successful value propositions, especially when, so for us in SAP is important that, business process optimization and something which can reduce the cycle time of a particular action, and which could internally result in a value proposition where we say either I'm saving the money or I'm saving the effort or I'm saving the time. So one of the applications that we built, I think 2 years back, and now I think a year has been in production with many more customers, we call Cash application, which typically reduce the cycle time of, giving the payment to the vendors basically by validating the document using the AI. On the fly. Earlier, which is to take the manual process for a pretty long time. Now using the AI, we're able to optimize the cycle time, I think from days to an hour, or maybe in some companies also, kind of a just-in-time kind of stuff there, which is pretty popular. Maybe I could also share the link on success stories around it later on. But I think we are seeing such kind of many more examples coming in the industry where AI being utilized in successful way and is being paying off to the large extent as well.
So Manu, your comment on the ROI aspect?
Slightly different for the automotive circles, because there's a long period of investment that we need to do on the technology, on the product, with AI running on the back end, in order to kind of really say that there's ROI on it. Right now is the investment phase for automotive, just like you would, kind of rely on tons of shopping data and medical data and what else in the data-based AI world, an automotive world, which is more relying on voice and video right now for an autonomous driving, for example, still in the collection phase, and there's no ready available data. So there's a big period of investment that we are kind of laying on, and people will talk about, having to pay for an autonomous car because it's come in loaded with a certain technology that's hard to come in a way. But on the other hand, there are parts of AI that we're working on that clearly amounts and contributes to the safety, vehicular safety, traffic safety in the car. And I'm sure that's invaluable, because you're directly kind of saving human lives with technology in that case. So a time to go for that to come, but not right away.
So just a follow-up question on that to both you, Manu and Rahul. So, one aspect is the productization of AI and, looking at the ROI aspect. But if you remember what Benoit mentioned around data and data to enable innovation, and you are both powerhouse of, in terms of multinationals, and I'm sure you have a lot of proprietary data. So have you ever thought about, enabling innovation around data? Because data is inexhaustible. So have you thought about any sandboxes, around your startup initiative, if you'd like to mention?
Still on mute, Rahul, if I may just finish that. Yeah, we're having a complete stream of activities that are based on data privacy, data protection, how holy data is and how ingenious you can get with the kind of data vehicle plus customer that we have. We're adhering to all the norms and regulations in the respective countries. And again, to the point that Paul made, Benoit made, EU-India collaboration is working extremely well when we share values on data privacy there for us as a brand as well. Compared to any other location we have in the world, I think there's a lot of trust between the two locations on how we are managing data, but there's even a special branch of work, engineering department that is focusing solely on data, not crudely put only on data monetization directly, but really on how carefully you need to treat data in the company. Clearly, that's a stream of work we're doing.
Thank you, Manu. So, Rahul, any reactions to that?
Yeah, I think it's a very important topic as such, especially when we are dealing with the cloud era. You have to be very responsible first if you are, holding the data for the organizations. And we have to really look at, there are two aspects to it, the kind of data that we build on our cloud businesses. One is with the system level data, which we are using a lot of AI technology to see how we can scale up the system, how we can build the predictive algorithms to look at the predictive maintenance from the system point of view, as well as how do we optimally use the resources from a system point of view and the usage behavior aspects, or which is completely internal and not maybe user would look at it. Whereas the from the user specific data aspects comes, there has been quite a stringent way that we look at it. So firstly, only the system level data, which is I would say anonymized format, and not have any personal information that get looked up to it. And then we would look at identify the pattern segmentation from there, and give us some kind of recommendation. For example, what kind of training could be good for if people have been joining earlier, or the kind of people who would go through the particular experience range, and how does they would take it forward their next kind of training. But at the same time, we also have these the Atom recommendation service as well, where like a particular person or particular profile has been bought a particular product, so that we would recommend those products to others. So we've been having those kind of experiences to be used in our products. But nevertheless, on the top of it, very important that how we maintain the privacy of the data, and then something that we could take up for the benefit of the business.
So I'm sure, you both being European companies, you are fully aware of GDPR, and while GDPR wanted to protect the data privacy, it also wanted to enable a marketplace. And I think, especially in the industrial side where non-personal data is involved, I think there's a lot of potential on building new innovations. And having that context in mind, if I may request Benoit, if you are listening to us, if you could switch on your camera, and if Paul, you are also available, because I wanted to bring in policy aspect here, Benoit. So somebody is asking, is the EU single market strategy and non-personal data restrict data sharing outside Europe, outside the European Economic Area? Is that something?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Sachin, for this question. I would answer in 3 points. The first one is, so you understand from my presentation that, of course, I mean, the main focus of GDPR, of course, and also of the data strategy is regarding privacy and private data. So personal data is the one which is most sensitive because it touches core values. So that's the first one. But of course, I mean, in addition to this, you have the non-personal data. And I think, I mean, I heard the other speakers. I mean, we have 2 different sets of non-personal data. We have the anonymized data, which we need to be sure that they are truly, I mean, anonymized, and that they would not be in any possibility considered as personal data. And that's something which is very important, particularly when we discuss in the health sector, which is very, very sensitive. I mean, the financial sector would be another one. And then you have, of course, and that was very, very good that you asked our internet regarding the non-personal data, the real non-personal data, which would come either from the private sector itself, and that's very interesting to know who is owning this data, who is generating or who is co-owning this data, or it can come also from the government, or from, we will see it more and more from the IoT devices that are going to that are going to be the sensors and all this that are going to generate, I mean, a lot of data, which would be truly non-personal data. What I want to say regarding the EU approach at the moment, the directive which is present at the moment in Europe on non-personal data, and which is regulating the free flow of non-personal data as its scope is only within the EU. So there is bar of data localization and free flow within the EU through the legislation, because that's where the EU can actually legislate. I mean, we have no power to legislate at the world level. So within the EU system, so we have this directive of free flow of data. And then after, I would refer to the communication which was circulated on the 19th of February, I think, and from the European Commission, which is a European strategy for data. And this strategy is developing the ambition of the EU, and that's where also we need to have collaboration and discussion with the international partners. So at bilateral level, it makes a lot of sense with India, but also in the international fora such as the G20, WTO, and other, because then it will impact regarding the non-personal data. It will have a lot of impacts regarding the ownership, the co-ownership, and the approach of the EU, which is developed. And I would invite the person who asked this question to read this very interesting European strategy for data, because it mentions a lot of aspects which are into that. I mean, and that will lead to the data, I mean, from government or from business, and to whom they go. And the strategy of the EU on that is, as I mentioned, is to try to develop incentives for sharing data, for having co-creating or co-generated data, but also to develop and to maximize the availability of governmental data, both for other governments and also for businesses, ensuring the anonymization, but for creating an environment and ecosystem which would be conducive for most of the startups and small businesses for having access to this data pool and maximizing the innovation potential.
Thank you, Benoit. I would probably like to invite Paul for a moment and ask him, listening to all the conversations, any business support actions that come to your mind? Do you see opportunities here for European and Indian businesses to collaborate around data? Paul, if you can.
Thank you, Sachin. Yes, I for sure. You know, I've been on a learning curve for an hour now, yeah, and there are massive opportunities. Very, very interesting to listen to you, Rahul and Manu, as well as Benoit and Mhrd. Thank you very much. But the question is actually mine, Sachin. I would like to ask Rahul and Manu, in terms of EU-India collaboration at a business level, is there something missing, something that you would want? You have policy representatives here, like Benoit. You have sort of people in the middle, like Sachin and myself, like the Business Support Project and the ICT Project, who have the ability and mandate to implement activities that can support your businesses in collaborating with others. And I know sometimes we hit upon sort of you collaborate in AI. Obviously, there's a lot of IP issues and a lot of you know, NDAs and confidentiality, but are there other elements? Is there something that's missing? I mean, you've heard Benoit talk about creating a conducive environment to make business happen, focusing on all the elements he spoke about, data privacy and so forth. But what I'd like to know, and certain activities of the Business Support Project are also gathering businesses in clusters and talking, ideating, think what can we do together, focusing also on maybe developing pilot projects. But what, in your view, Manu, you mentioned that you are yourself a microcosm of EU-India collaboration, and so will SAP obviously be. And you've created big research and development, research and innovation units here. And I think you've moved a long way. I mean, I think if you look 15, maybe 20 years back, maybe those research and innovation centers that you had were more cost arbitrage centers than actual independent, own, derived innovation. But you're on that now. I mean, when you talk about innovation, you're creating AI for your cars with an Indian accent. I don't think that will not be done in Stuttgart. Yeah. So I think you're on to that. But is this something that we, Sachin and I, and this whole ecosystem could put in place to fill a gap or support you in your endeavor, support and collaboration between companies, between the continents and the economic regional areas? I mean, what I want to do is that we all together roll up our sleeves and see how can we increase economic activity to the benefit of everybody, yourselves as well as society. That was a long question, sorry.
Thank you, Paul. Excellent question. And I would invite, Manu and then Rahul to answer. But just that both of you are aware, we are now running out of time. We are already 2 minutes past. So maybe this could be the last remark. So you can combine it with your any, concluding advice that you may have for all of us, like Paul asked in the, for us to do some future action. And I can also assure you that so far we have also had a very great collaboration with the Indian counterpart, like we had Mhrd. So in case if you need, a good support also from the Indian side, and we have Benoit from the European side. So I think we have all the people in the room. So your ideas will be, definitely taken very seriously. So over to you, Manu, for your remarks.
Well, thank you, Paul, for the question. I think I'm glad there's little time now because you drag me into territory where I have to remove my corporate cap and talk to you as maybe as a GINSEP ambassador or something else, which I'm also doing in parallel. There's a need, of course, to catch up offline. But what I can tell you is corporates fight their own battle, of course, right? Try to even find solutions by their own. But when I look, and I had the chance to be in Berlin at one of the government invited meetings, again, representing Mercedes, this is just an example of what goes on. And in the room were a lot of what you call Mittelstand companies, or MSMEs, German MSMEs that are still wanting to discover India. And then we realized that a corporate like us are very well guided, actually, relatively, and a lot of middle enterprises and small scale enterprises, German ones, reaching out to India. Indian startups, like some of them have been commenting on the Q&A, still need a lot of support to get on with each other. And that's one comment. And the second real quick comment is within the corporate circles, and maybe we can talk about that offline as well, we still find, especially with AI and data, some more hesitancies, let's say, between the region, certainly EU towards India, which stops us from kind of openly collaborating on certain higher levels of data related projects and topics. So while we've opened up very well and built trust over classic IT and software and mechanical developments and so on, I think with data, there's still a way to go between European Union opens up, if I may say, and I'm just observing it, not just as Mercedes, but just observing it from all the Mittelstand companies that I meet and the forums that I talk and the smaller and medium enterprises that talk to me. So we can catch that offline. There's a way to go there. And I think if you remove that hesitancy layer, EU can much better utilize the talent in India for doing a lot of things.
Thank you, Manu. Yeah. Rahul?
Yep. So thanks, Paul, for bringing up this question. I mean, there are, I would say, a lot of synergies that we can draw out of this collaboration further, especially on the machine learning and AI side. There have been a technology front which we could add the value, and I'm sure there are many companies as we are coming from the European section. Some ideas which always, I thought of bringing up, like more on bringing the maybe EU-India consortium for AI. That's something we can work together and draw the best practices or the roadmap that each of our organizations are working on, and maybe somewhere we can draw the solve the common problems and share the best practices among different organizations that are doing. Many times we might able to solve the similar problems, or sometimes we learn from each other. The problems are very different, or someone would have already solved the problem and maybe there's some other challenge to solve in different contexts. But from technology front, I would encourage if we can have some kind of a consortium where we would regularly exchange our ideas and thought around the AI space. That would be the good way forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good idea.
Thank
Sachin.
you. Maybe, Paul, if you agree, it would be also good to get the last remarks from Benoit. Benoit, are you still there?
I am still here, even though, I mean, you can see that I feel much more liberated than at the beginning, much less in the lockdown environment.
Nice background, by the way, more natural.
Thank you. That's a real one this time. So
any reactions to what you heard from Manu and Rahul? Do you see any ideas that we could take up from here?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very useful. So thank you very much, I mean, Sachin, for guiding this discussion. And that's definitely what we need to be fed by the evidence and by the reality of the private sector. So we work on different issues. As you mentioned at the beginning, AI is very horizontal. And not only it's horizontal, but it integrates so many different actors between the governmental actors, the academia, and the industry. We have to bring them, and we have to take all these elements. If I wanted just to focus on this, on what has been mentioned, and the focus here regarding the industry, definitely we're very much interested in hearing, I mean, the industry and the actual potential elements that would unlock the exchange between EU and India, and definitely the offer of Manu of discussing further offline. I mean, I'll take it up. I mean, to see more about these issues regarding data, which is a major work on which we're doing. I just want to say that regarding the exchanges also on startup and SMEs, I mentioned at the beginning that we're working with these accelerators and incubators and these exchanges. These exchanges at this level are very difficult because they are on one part elements on market discovery, and on the other one for this very small enterprise is also the physical access and the access to the other countries. And we're working on that, and I just want to finish on that, just to open it up on maybe, I mean, more general and other fields. We're working also with the Ministry of External Affairs, actually, on facilitating the access to the EU for the Indian startups and of India for the EU startups, based very specifically on the mobility of the people, delivering some specific startup visas for the entrepreneurs. So we're trying to have an approach as holistic as possible, taking all these elements, and within that we are being fed again by the feedback from the field. So please keep giving us this information. It's very useful in all the policy dialogue that we're having. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Benoit. And I think message to me is quite clear. And I think, Paul, you would agree. There is more work to do as we talk. I think more threads are opening up, and I think we can take it up. And I imagine that 1 hour, 15 minutes would be sufficient for the webinar, but we are already 1 hour, 25 minutes. So we could not do justice, to all the ideas still in this webinar. Maybe we will do a follow-up conversation. Maybe we can have a specific conversation just on data or just on algorithms, and maybe just on, possible collaboration ideas. So that are my thoughts. And with that, I thank you all of you for your active participation. I would really welcome if you could send us your thoughts or any future suggestions in writing, and that includes all the participants, so that we can do much more coverage in terms of the topics. And with that, I give it over to Paul. If you have any last remarks, Paul, I'm done here.
No, Sachin, I think that was a wrap. Very, very interesting. Thank you all for being there. Also, thank you to all the participants for joining and leaving us some questions. And yes, Benoit, you're right. There's still work to do. So thank you for laying out that map and agenda for Sachin and myself. And Rahul Emmanuel will for sure be in contact with you and follow up on some of these issues that we've been discussing today. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you very much.
Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you.